A satellite has blasted into orbit to measure the levels of methane gas in the atmosphere.
Which is significant because it could potentially sniff out large emitters of the greenhouse gas that's responsible for about 30% of today's global warming.
And this will give everybody a bird's eye view of the potent greenhouse gas.
It's really amazing to be here today, to be launching a satellite. No environmental group has ever done that.
We discovered that many of the methane leaks are quite small, so we had to develop a new innovative spectrometer, 2 spectrometers actually, to put on MethaneSat, to have the level of precision necessary to be able to see from space that high up these very small leaks that are around oil and gas fields all over the world.
2, 1, ignition. And liftoff, Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Transporter 10.
You just have a real clarity now, a clarity we've never had before. And I think people realize you don't have to accept what somebody says, whether that's a government or a company. You can actually directly look at it, see what it is, and that is completely different than anything we've ever had for greenhouse gases. What I refer to is we're going to have radical transparency.
The notion of getting everyone in the tent and reaching out to the energy companies, oil and gas companies, having everybody working is the only real solution.
While it will allow government the opportunity and companies the opportunity to find and fix the leaks, it will allow all of us to hold them accountable for doing exactly that. And if we do our job, the aspiration is a 75% reduction planet-wide from oil and gas methane emissions.
We are grateful that the sole responsibility for preserving and protecting this planet and public health in a fair and just way isn't solely the obligation of the EPA, but it's the obligation of organizations like EDF.
Stage separation, stage 1 flip.
Separation confirmed.
In stage engine, the MVAC.
MethaneSat, separation confirmed.
Well, there's over 4,000 working satellites up there, but that one is going to change the world. It's an honor to be with you to talk about climate solutions, and I wanted today to discuss 2 of the most important things we can do to go big and to go fast. And then I want to share just a few words about hope. Now, we often hear that we need to reach net zero in 2050. And that's true. But we're never going to get there unless we do a hell of a lot by 2030. So at the Environmental Defense Fund, we are absolutely focused on getting big results at scale quickly. I want students entering high school this fall to see real results by the time they graduate. So how do we make that happen? Now, it was scientist Jonathan Foley, who runs Project Drawdown, who called on the world to focus on what he calls the 2 emergency brakes that we need to pull down. He defines these as solutions that have no delays and instantly work on the atmosphere. He urges us to work to reduce emissions from methane pollution from all sources, given their potency. And the second is to reduce the vast amount of carbon dioxide from tropical deforestation. He calls these the 2 things that can move the needle the most in the next few years. By the way, the Environmental Defense Fund's work on both of these strategies is enabled by a great partnership with the Bezos Earth Fund. We wouldn't be where we are on these projects without their support. So let's start with that satellite. Now you might ask, an environmental group launching a satellite? And believe me, 6 years ago, after I got off the stage at TED in Vancouver, a lot of people rolled their eyes and asked that very question. It's fair. The answer is methane. Now, as you know, methane is the main component of natural gas, and it has a staggering capacity to trap heat on Earth. 80 times more powerful pound for pound than carbon dioxide for the first 20 years after its release. That's why the methane pollution we release this year will actually warm the planet as much in the next decade as all the carbon dioxide released from all the burning of fossil fuel on Earth this year. Let me say that again. Methane escaping in the sky in 2024 will cause as much global warming as all of the planet's cars, trucks, power plants, and other fossil fuel sources of CO2. Now, there's no doubt that our long-term future depends on making dramatic cuts in CO2 and building a clean economy all over the planet. At the same time, reducing methane is the fastest way to slow global warming in the next decade. It is an emergency brake that will keep us from sliding off the road. So that is why we launched a satellite earlier this year. This new technology will revolutionize our understanding of where methane pollution is. It's the product of more than a decade of scientific inquiry and technology development. It culminated in the launch that you just saw back in March at the SpaceX facility in California, where I had the privilege with the whole team of watching that rocket blast off. It was a deeply moving moment. MethaneSat will open a whole new chapter in our winning big results on climate, but also just plain in proving that big results are possible, demonstrating that we can make big gains against the impending climate chaos. For the first time ever, we'll have detailed global information on the source of methane pollution. We'll be able to look at oil wells and landfills, pipelines, water treatment plants, even big agricultural sources. With unparalleled precision, MethaneSat will start a new era of corporate accountability. The data from the satellite will be open source, free to everyone, scientists, companies, citizens the world over. The satellite has already passed with flying colors all of the tests, and we expect to be releasing the first actionable data this fall. That data will lead to big results. How big? Well, the International Energy Agency estimates that the oil and gas industry can cut its worldwide emissions by 75%, two-thirds of that at no net cost. So we believe MethaneSat will help reduce global temperatures below what's being projected before the end of this decade. Now that is the scale and speed of progress that we need. But I want to note that this progress is being enabled also by a very low tech strategy, a willingness to talk with people that we disagree with. When it was first announced at last year's international climate talks that they were going to be held at the United Arab Emirates, a major fossil fuel producing country, and would be led by the CEO of the state oil and gas company, there was naturally widespread concern among the environmental community. After all, fossil fuels are what got us into this mess. But EDF's view is that this crisis requires everyone to solve it, and that a leader in the oil and gas industry actually could be in a unique position to influence his peers. So I engaged with that oil industry CEO, Dr. Sultan Ahmed Al-Jaber, regularly, encouraging him to seize the opportunity. And in doing so, we took a lot of heat. But it just might be to turn down the temperature. We all need to be willing to take some heat, to take some big risks. We have to make big bets to get big results. Well, those conversations led to the COP leadership. The COP leadership recruited 50 of the biggest oil companies in the world, representing 40% of the industry, to agree to cut their methane pollution by 90% by 2030. And as they do, methane sat will be circling around the globe every 90 minutes, day and night, making sure that they uphold their commitment. Now let's leave space and come down to Earth. The second big pathway I wanted to mention that John Foley talked about was tropical deforestation. Now, somewhere along the way in my years in the environmental community, tree hugger became an insult. But we'd better start hugging trees if we want to save ourselves. Because with the enormous power of trees to absorb climate pollution, we can't reach our goals without conserving and growing forests. Indeed, the destruction of tropical forests causes more climate pollution than all but 3 countries. Problem is, despite many pledges and some progress, the world keeps burning our tropical forests. Every minute, we lose an area that equals 10 soccer fields of tropical forest, damaging people's livelihoods, biodiversity, and the climate. In fact, in the time since I've said tree hugger, we've lost another 10 soccer fields of forest. But stopping deforestation is complex. It takes money. Governments are stepping up, but only with a fraction of the funds that are needed. Far more money could come from companies investing in protecting tropical forests and the indigenous and local communities who have long been the forest's greatest stewards. And that requires that we make forests worth more alive than dead. Financing carbon credits through large-scale forest conservation programs is one example. The LEAF Coalition builds on 3 decades of work with indigenous communities, forest peoples, nonprofit groups, and governments to stop deforestation. Under a novel public-private partnership, it secured $1.5 billion and growing in purchase pledges from some of the world's leading companies and several governments. The goal was to reward those forest nations and communities for their efforts to conserve forests by adhering to the highest quality forest carbon market standards. Money flows based on performance, not promises. That is, only after the reductions have been made. The first purchase agreements have now been signed with Costa Rica and Ghana, and our efforts go well beyond LEAF. We're engaged in a range of initiatives to scale up forest conservation, not only in the tropics, but here in the American West. For example, we're working with the Brazilian Amazon in service of coalitions of indigenous and grassroots social organizations to help them secure the land rights, resource rights, and economic opportunities they need to continue to steward their lands. Maximizing their fair share of revenues from forest finance program is one of the requirements of Project LEAF. Closer to home, the importance of this forest conservation work is literally all around us here in Sun Valley. The iconic landscape of the American West is increasingly threatened by unnaturally severe, catastrophic wildfire events that devastate forests, damage public health, and erode the fabric of rural communities. Even as we work to clean up the industrial world, we must never forget and never underestimate the absolute necessity of preserving our natural world. So now we've talked about the critical importance of cutting methane pollution, of saving forests, and the need to go big and to go fast. If we can increase our ambition, even in tough times, we have the power to build a safer, cleaner, more prosperous future. And that brings me to hope. Hope's a big deal for me. I talk about it all the time. And it's not optimism. It's not a blind faith that things are going to be okay. Hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. It's a call to shape the world we want to inhabit, and I urge each and every one of you to remain actively engaged in supporting efforts for environmental progress. Reject passive complacency or the idea that these issues are just too big. Each of the milestone achievements I've shared with you today highlights the fact that all of us, when empowered to act and emboldened by one another, can make a tangible difference through our engagement. Join me in being hopeful, and by acting, our future depends on it. So I'd like to see if folks have a question or find anything I said controversial. Anything you'd like to ask, fire away. I think we're going to have some microphones. Yeah. Sylvia Earle. Thank you.
Bravo for what you're doing to go big. It really is what we need to do. Similarly, for the ocean, we need to stop clear-cutting the ocean and to go big in terms of protection. Only 3% of the ocean is now safeguarded in a highly or significant way. 97% is open for exploitation. Think of this, the billions that are being used to subsidize the extraction of ocean wildlife. We call it fisheries. We delude ourselves thinking that it's about food security. It is simply not. It's mostly food choice. It's about money. It's not about people need to eat ocean wildlife on an industrial scale. So looking at your success with terrestrial applications, just how can we work together to take this on a more global, comprehensive way, embracing the ocean? We need to rewild instead of dewilding the ocean.
Great.
We need to scale up the protection of the vast areas, the coral reefs, the deep sea in particular. And thinking about the methane, you know, there's that element of surprise, the unknown, the deep frozen methane in the sea, that if the planet warms even a little bit, the greater opportunity for those still frozen methane deposits to be released.
Thank you, Sylvia. And first of all, thank you for everything you have done throughout your career. It is terrific. The courage you've shown, the results you've gotten are amazing. Starting with those methane that might be released from the methyl hydrates in the oceans, the thing we most urgently need to do to keep that from happening, or the tundra from melting and methane going up, the thing we most need to do is find the quickest possible way to limit temperature rising. And it turns out that the best way to do that is by limiting anthropogenic releases of methane and to attack this biggest tractable source of CO2, tropical forests. But I want you to know that the Environmental Defense Fund has a significant oceans program, and we've turned to how do we protect, for instance, all those creatures in the mesopelagic layer that now the industry wants to harvest, not realizing that when they eat and when they defecate, enormous amounts of carbon are being deposited on the ocean floor. And if we stop that layer from working, we are exacerbating the problem. So we have to protect the oceans, absolutely. Maybe we have time for one more question. Yes? I think there's a mic coming your way.
I'll go fast. I'm Deanna Cohen from Plastic Pollution Coalition, so nice to see you, Fred. Just a question, in making the decision to launch that satellite, did you also look at ways to use drones or things that we have that are a little closer
Yes.
to Earth?
So we spent $20 million on drones, airplanes, guys with flare cameras roving around, and we got tens of thousands of measurements. But they were spot measurements. And when we presented them, they were always vulnerable to the claim, oh, that was last year, that was 6 months ago. So even though we spent $20 million and we got great data and advanced the cause tremendously, we realized, along with a Harvard professor named Steve Wolfsey and our scientist Steve Hamburg that you saw on the screen, that the most cost-effective way to do this on an ongoing basis and give us the ongoing accountability we needed was from space. And that's why it's a big project, cost $88 million, but we decided it was by far the most cost-effective. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you all. Take care.